I'm Jessica Rano, FY17 President of the Society of Women Engineers. Welcome to We Local. I'm excited to be here. This is, as Marta said, this is our second ever We Local. Our first ever was last weekend at Pittsburgh, so we're going at them fast and furious. So it's so exciting that these have come to fruition. This came from a crazy idea when I was a region governor 6 years ago. The board of directors and the region governors started discussing this, and it has taken a while for everything to be pulled together, and here we are. So, welcome. I have the honor to introduce you to our opening keynote, Celeste Mergens. Celeste is known for her always present smile, as well as her ability to build teams and empower collaborations. Celeste founded Days for Girls during a trip to Kenya in 2008, where she discovered through discussions with young women that menstrual hygiene was a huge challenge. With over 17 years of experience in nonprofit work, a reputation of building teams, and a strong personal interest in sewing and tailoring, Celeste put her creativity to use to find a solution. And then she listened to the feedback of women around the globe that led to a uniquely appropriate design. 27 versions later. As engineers, we can all appreciate that. Just 7 years later, Days for Girls empowers women and girls on over 100 countries on 6 continents. Days for Girls has been featured in O Magazine, Forbes, and was recently named a Huffington Post Next 10 organization positioned to change the world in the next decade. Celeste's passion for this issue is infectious, and she's helped to bring international attention to an issue that has long been neglected. All with the support of her beloved husband, Don, their 6 children, and 13 grandchildren. Celeste is Washington State's 2014 Mother of the Year and a recipient of the Soar Optimist Ruby Award. She is continually grateful to be part of such a direct and effective key to empowering people and communities. I now welcome Celeste to the stage.
Good morning. It's such a privilege to be here with you today and share with you the amazing journey of Days for Girls. I hold in my hand something that's proven to last 2 to 4 years, something that can change women's lives, allowing girls to go to school and women to go to work all over the world. Something this simple turns out to be one of the keys to reversing cycles of poverty and violence against women. Who would have ever guessed something so simple could be so crucial and effective? I certainly never did. In fact, when I was a child, you know how you think about what you want to be when you grow up? On that list was never world expert on menstruation and sex. However, on that list was to grow up to be an engineer. When I was a child, I read a book about a young man who made a ham radio of his very own. And this ham radio was able to talk all the way to people in China. And I wanted to be an engineer and be able to make things that could create new connections in the worst way. I decided to be an engineer. Unfortunately, as I grew older, a tragedy happened as I had just started my degree and I wasn't able to complete it. However, I am happy to say that I am the proud holder of KE7 RXK ham radio license. Thank you. It's amazing how our life takes us in directions that we never saw coming. And I get to share with you some of the journey that we've had with Days for Girls. We get to see some of the women that we've reached, and we have, in fact, today, reached 101 nations on 6 continents. I get to share with you a photo of that moment when this all started. It is the captured image of a moment that takes your breath away, those moments that your whole life is about to change and you have no idea what's in store. This is Days for Girls, girls in Nepal, and a woman in Nepal teaching her people how to use Days for Girls kits. These are the slums of Kabira, and this is the place that we first came to. I was actually working on global sustainable development in rural areas of Kenya. I had come with a small family foundation, and when we arrived to Kabira, and it's one of the largest slums in the world, when you stand on the edge, it looks like the sea of corrugated metal stretching in front of you. And as we walked through it, we were going to see a great program called the Health Store. And this was a program that made sustainable community health accessible to all. The man that founded it had been having French fries in Australia at McDonald's and said if French fries can be the same all over the world, then we should be able to give medical pharmaceuticals in similar deliveries and similar quality all over the world. Isn't that a great aha moment? And so I got to visit the place where he was doing this model in this place. As I traveled in the slums of Kabira, the dirt pathways had these passages through like ditches and trenches still built along the side, and there was water and that smelled very putrid, and I suspected there was effluence in it. As I stepped over them and watched children chasing after balls of plastic tied with twine and watched people who were struggling, I thought, I wonder what would make the greatest difference here. You see, my whole emphasis was on how do we make them have the resources to reduce poverty in their area so they get to use their strength and their wisdom. And while I was doing that and thinking that, I had no idea I was about to run into one of the keys. This is the room of an orphanage and school that I've been invited to. It's one of their bedrooms. And I share it because it's an example of how overcrowded it was. There were bunk beds end to end and side to side, and children slept on the bunks 2 to 3 to a level, so that there were 50 children in a small space like this. Why this is important is, in 2008, the post-election violence there had happened. 1,500 people were killed, 500,000 people displaced, and suddenly this orphanage that was already way too crowded now had 1,400 reported children. This space was already crowded in the way I told you when there were only 420, and now there were 1,400. I had, since I first saw it, been trying to find ways to help them because you know how children are. They captured my heart, and I had to give them sustainable solutions. And I wish I could tell you all of them because they're really great, and as engineers, you would love them. But we only have 45 minutes together. You can ask me later. So as we were there, and talking with them, and then getting the call, knowing their little faces, and hearing that they were completely out of food and had been for 2 days. I am someone who has experienced hunger. I am someone who has lived as a child without a home. This moment had grave impact for me. I wanted with all of my heart to just feed these kids, and I had already done everything I could in the weeks preceding. There were no further resources I could possibly give. In fact, my neighbors were now crossing the street so as not to run into me, knowing I would ask for help for the kids. There is nothing more I could do, and now I get the call they're completely out of food. I went to bed that night pleading to think of something, anything that would help. But instead, nothing came to me, and I went to bed still hoping and pleading. So imagine my surprise when I woke up at 2:30 in the morning with it going through my head. Have you asked what the girls are doing for feminine hygiene? I hadn't even thought to ask that, not even once. It's in a drawer where we live. It's everywhere where we live, and I didn't think to ask. I thought of water, agriculture, health solutions, education, but had never asked that question. And I ran to the computer to ask, not expecting an immediate reply, because they don't have Wi-Fi everywhere, certainly not then, and not even computers everywhere. So I didn't expect a response, but I got an immediate response when I asked what they do. And the answer? Nothing. They wait in their rooms. This is their rooms. I tried to imagine how they would possibly do that, and it turned out that they would sit on a piece of cardboard for 2 to 4 days. And because food was scarce and they couldn't get to it unless someone thought to bring them that scarce resource, they would just sit there with very little need to eliminate, no access to hygiene, and wait. I knew we needed to do a solution, and I wish that I could make you proud and say that I came up with the most genius solution ever. I did not. My first solution was disposables, because We use disposables. And so we got them, but do you know what? I bet you can already guess. There is no place to dispose of disposables. There's no truck that comes by. There's no way to dispose of them. So when I got there, 3 weeks later, there were no, they were rolled up in the chain link along adjacent to the latrines. They were in piles and piled on the end. And even I saw a girl reach in to grab one and was told she was going to wash it so she could reuse them. So stigma against women, health issues, and importantly, what I did know is that if I sent money for food and sent money for pads and later and each month found a way to send money for pads and they needed food, they would use it for food, right? We all would. And this was what happened next. This is the moment when Days for Girls was born. Now ignore the cheesy smile. This was before white hair took over. You might, but otherwise you might recognize me. Now, so these are the first girls to ever receive kits. We talked to them about health. We talked to them about this amazing process called periods, because if you don't know what a period is, everything we associate with blood is injury, illness, right? Now imagine, you're like the Kenyan woman that I met who was just 16 years old. She was statuesque and beautiful and charming. We all fell in love with her immediately. Really rare to send a 16-year-old to one of these Ambassador of Women's Health training from the villages, but they sent her and we could see why. After we taught her what a period is, guess what she said? For the last 2 years, I thought I had AIDS. But because of the stigma of AIDS, I told no one, unquote. If you can say the sentence, because of the stigma of AIDS, you have some health education behind you, or certainly education. And in fact, she can speak 4 languages, Swahili, French, English, and her tribal dialect. And this woman didn't hear it because that's not written on the bottom of your foot. And it turns out that all over the world, women are shamed. Women are asked to be isolated. It's not just this group, it's groups all over the world who use leaves, mattress stuffing, stones, corn cobs, fabric that isn't able to be attached to anything and doesn't have a moisture barrier, so she can't sit down and she can't be in class. And often they are missing 5 to 6 days of school a month, every month, in places that there are no textbooks. And so she falls behind and she drops out. And sometimes, because of the very disability of her very biology, she buys into it, that she is worth less than the oxen in the yard that she is if she is in rural Nepal, asked to stay with during her entire menstruation because she is unclean. And so she's asked to stay out with them, or on an outcrop, or in a stick hut where she is very vulnerable. In fact, recently 2 died because of this practice called chapati. Not years ago, not even months ago, but only about a month and a half ago. In this space, they explained to us what the hazard was for them in this moment. With big smiles on their face after they received their first Days for Girls kit, they said, "Thank you so much, because before you came, we had to let them use us if we wanted to leave the room and go to class." I hoped that didn't mean what I feared it meant. I had to teach all of the ones there and give them their kits and another 250 behind them. And after 500 girls, they met with me as agreed. And they explained that they were being sexually exploited in exchange for a single disposable pad. This was the moment Days for Girls was born. What I didn't yet know is that this is a global issue. I just returned from Peru. In fact, I landed from Peru here the night before last. And then I can report to you that I got to hear of the Quechuan women in the very rural, very remote parts of Nepal where they live in the rainforest and have all of their needs taken care of. Water, food, housing, strong communities, that they leave that safe place to go to the city. And in the city, we learned that they are exploited because they don't know the ways of the city. They're used, and they're in great vulnerable circumstance. And what did they go to the city for? So they could earn money to buy pads. Imagine something this small that lasts 2 to 4 years. I was searching. Because of my background, I've been searching hold on, sorry. I promised my friend I would not do this. It's just, there's no hope for me. Let's just sign it off. You just have to love me the way I am, because this is me. So here's what happened. From childhood, I wanted to do something to help people recognize how much they matter, and that circumstances don't define us. Our choices and responses to circumstance do. I wanted that for everyone. I wanted to have solutions, and so I searched for them with all my heart. I studied for them. I did a master's in global sustainable development, and I was willing to travel anywhere to help apply them. Do you find it completely amazing that something this simple is one of the keys to reversing cycles of poverty and violence against women? I do, but I can tell you it really, really is. And that's awesome news, because there are so many things that are hard to change, but this is not one of them. This is something we can change, and I have proof. This is Nepal. This is in the very rural areas that I'm actually talking about. These are them with Days for Girls kits. And we today have an audacious goal to reach every girl, everywhere, period, by 2022. So here's how we do it. And here's why the solution's so effective. We have something that we call, that's a basic premise of Days for Girls, and that is to honor the cultural perspective of those we serve with, and to honor the wisdom of those we serve with. So I'm going to start with this. How many of you saw this or got this in a text or Facebook? Or I got it in a text. And my sons said, "What color is this?" And I answered, "What do you see?" Yeah, I see white and gold. And I see white and gold too. And my sons also saw black and blue. If you don't see it that way, honestly, they saw black and blue. So I said, "Are you serious? Are you playing with me?" And they said, one of my sons sent me a little picture of a white and beige dog and said, "Mom, can I keep the black and blue dog, please?" And in fact, we know that only 30% see the dress as what it really is, blue and black. Isn't that amazing? Now, being a science girl, I had to back up and Google what the phenomena was. And of course now, because I'm betting you did too, I'm betting on it. I looked it up, and it's because of what's around it, and our brain has to make a decision about color, and so it defaulted based on what's around it to go to gold and white for some of us. We recognize with Days for Girls that we all see things differently based on the experience of what's around us. In fact, I can share an example of that. Do you remember when you were a child waiting for Christmas or your birthday? How long was 3 days? Right? Right? And yet time is time on a watch and a calendar, and yet it's different at different times, and certainly different in different cultures. And so we have done something all over the globe, and that is really great listening. By honoring the wisdom of those we serve and serve with, I can give you an example of this, and celebrating victories and failing forward. Okay, but I want to share with you an example of wisdom that's hidden in amazing places. Who do you think invented mobile banking? Anybody know? Would you be surprised if I told you these people? The Maasai. Did you know this? So have you seen cell phones where you have minute cards that you buy and then you scratch off and then you put the numbers into your phone? Have you seen this when you've been somewhere? So they had those kind of cell phones. In fact, I've been in places where they're walking along with their glorious robes and staffs, and then on the other hand, they have their cell phone, right? And they started trading with cell minutes. They would transfer these cell minutes to each other and use it to pay for something. I'll send you 2,500 cell minutes. And they were doing this, and it was noted, what are you doing? And it was noted they were using it for currency, and that is where the inspiration for mobile banking came from. Aren't you surprised? But all over the world, every culture and every individual has a strength unique to them. And if you're watching and listening, amazing things happen. And I would also say each of us have hidden in our strengths weakness, and strength hidden in our weaknesses. I can give you a personal example of this. It's a little embarrassing, but true. If you want someone to focus on something, ask me to do it. I could focus in a storm, tornado, or earthquake, no problem. And unfortunately, I can focus. So when people are trying to get my attention, there are times that it's like, Celeste, 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 Celeste. 15 seconds later, oh, yes, what did you need? Every one of us have strengths and weaknesses, and cultural wisdom is all over this world. There isn't one person or one people and one culture, so what if we bridge all of our strengths together? So this is an example of our failing forward design, 28 versions. Our first one was horrible, and I can say that because it was my design. They were white, because sanitary themes are white, right? They had ribbons on the end so they could hold the pad in place, and the pad looked like a pad because it was a pad. However, raise your hand if you would be willing to put a stained pad to dry outside in your front yard with a stain on it. Anybody? No? I should have thought of that, and I didn't. But what I did know is to listen. And they explained many, many things, one of which was that, of course, they needed it to not look like a pad. The stigma and shame there is even bigger than here. And speaking of here, wouldn't you say there's stigma and shame about menstruation here as well? We would rather talk about diarrhea than menstruation. True? What if the whole world decided to recognize that without periods, there would be no people? In fact, I've been in rooms where they heard that for the first time, and I watched the shame fall away as they sighed, and all of their shoulders dropped. What if we decided that everywhere? What if we didn't buy into the shame anymore? What if instead we said, we're going to respect the amazing biology and bodies that we have? So we listen to them while teaching them. A hugely important part of what we do is teaching curriculum about what a period is, how babies happen, how to defend yourself, that you have the right to say no. And by the way, is rape sex or is it violence? In a lot of parts of the world, it's believed that if you're raped, you are now no longer worthy of marriage, and you are no longer worthy to be part of the community. We get to change that with a simple conversation that opens with this. So you see next to it a squishy version, and you also see next to it the pink, see the pink plastic? That was like pink go-go boot plastic, and it crinkled when they walked. Bad idea. And we kept working until today. It's globally responded to that it washes with very little water. And this is what it looks like. How do you make a pad not look like a pad? Like this. It washes with very little water. It dries very quickly. It only uses, in fact, a quarter of the water of the original design, which is really important in many parts of the world that we serve in. And it is adaptable to personal daily flow. This thing is amazing and so simple that women all over the world can be trained to make it as an enterprise so they can sustain it being reached to their whole communities in 101 nations on 6 continents and growing. Can you connect the dots and see the power of that? This small. I never would have guessed. Okay, so we're going to talk about bridging together. This is Niagara Falls. Many years ago, over 160 years ago, when they were first trying to think of how to build a bridge, it seemed impossible. This chasm is 800 feet wide, over 235 feet straight down on both sides. And they thought about, okay, it's time to build a suspension bridge. Now, you as engineers may not be as fascinated as I am. I have watched the NOVA special, and I still am wondering over the miracle of bridges. And back then, all they wanted was the opportunity to make this bridge come together. They thought of putting a line, because you in fact build one line, right? And then the engineers send another line back over and another line back over until it starts the strength of the cables. Well, in this case, how would they get it across? They thought of a rocket. They thought of a cannon, and nothing was going to work. And then a man said, what if we use a kite? So they started a kite contest. $10 was a lot of money back then. And finally, months and months later, a little boy came up with a flag called the Union. And over it went, and he made it to the other side. And the first connection of this marvelous bridge and this spectacular view and opportunity for tourists to come from Canada and the US was started with a kite, a wire, less than a quarter-inch wide, and a little boy and a man who said, what if we do a kite? Simple things hold great power, and we should remember the power of small. So we're going to talk about it in Days for Girls context. This is a bridge. Do you know this one? The DNA bridge in Singapore. This is also a bridge. I love this one. This is the Hendrickson Wave Bridge, although I like to call it the Slinky Bridge. And this also is Singapore. And this is my bridge made on the PowerPoint. Okay, it's not a bridge yet, but it represents the chasms that we have to go bridge sometimes, whether it's with your clients and not understanding one side of your team being able to talk to the other side, because one set's engineering and one set is public communications, right? And these two sides aren't quite being able to communicate. Or whether it is that, in our case, you're talking about something completely taboo. So how do you have those conversations and have effectiveness? This is how. The first thing you consider, and sometimes they're really, really rough waters, and a shark. I did that by myself too. Okay, so here's what you do first. When you're building a bridge, you think about what kind of bridge do you want to build? And by that I mean, what outcome do you want? What result do you want? And the next thing you think about is, okay, maybe, there we go. The next thing you think about is surveying the other side, understanding where they are coming from and what results they want and what might be important to them. If you don't survey the other side as well as what you want as the outcome, you know what happens? You might not ever connect with them at all. And now you're going to be, maybe, it's quite possible, swimming with the fishes. So it's really important to not just think about what you want to build as an outcome, but also their side, what is important to them. So here's an example. Okay, so we start laying lines between the two of us. And we, one by one, even your introduction should include what's important to them. I can give you a great example. So you decide on your bridge what kind of a design you want. You survey the other side, and that is what matters to them. And then the connections between the two of you are where there's common ground. So here you're going to communicate from the perspective of what matters to them. So you're speaking their language. Even if it's English, sometimes we're not speaking the same language, right? So make sure you're speaking from their perspective. The next thing is to try to start laying these communications with some very important things in mind. Make sure to make them right. Nobody likes to be wrong. And in development, we often come in and say, you're doing it wrong. You got it wrong and you've got to fix this and we've got the only solution for you. But when you're trying to build a bridge, you don't tell them what's wrong. You try to find mutual places that you have in common, that you can sincerely say, you're right. Now, if you don't say it sincerely, what happens? It doesn't work, because we can all feel when someone's giving a line. But if you sincerely find any place to be right, you make a connection. The other thing to note is when we say the word but, we disconnect. So let me give you an example. I really, really love your jacket. It looks really good on you, and especially with that necklace. But as soon as I say that, everything I said goes, right? Right? And so use the word and then they then what you just said is joined with what is to come. So when you're doing a very difficult joining of perspectives and trying to build a bigger bridge, get the butt out and go with and. And the next thing is to invite people to be part of the solution, because people support what they create. Isn't that true? You support what you're part of and what you create. So even in the most small ways, let them be part of decisions and solutions, because people support what they create. And invite them. How many of you love being told what to do? I know you don't, because you're engineers. I know, and I am just the worst. It's a fault of mine. You can invite me to walk this planet with you without water for miles, and I'm in. But the minute you tell me to do it, invite people. Okay, so here we go. I get to share with you the most amazing example. Okay, these are female genital cutters. Does everyone know what that is? So this is a practice in many parts of the world where women's genitalia are part or all are removed and then stitched back up so that it's very painful to even urinate in some cases, or even have menstruation in the worst cases. And it's a practice that happens all over the world. And I had been invited in Kenya, Kenya, to go to talk with them. My first thought was, correctly, I believe, what do I have to do with that? They have no reason to even care what I think. That's not my conversation. These are not my people. Why would they care to have me be part of it? They assured me that there was mutual respect and that I was invited, and that the 92% of the women there were involved in female cutting. I checked with my friends to do that other part, their surveying of the other side, and asked about that. And many of my Kenyan friends said that's not true. It couldn't be 92%. It's against the law. We have a new constitution. It can't be 92%. I checked with the people there and they confirmed it was 92%. So I did more homework and found out more about them, because I told my friend Andy, as I was pondering this opportunity to go talk to them, that the only bridge that I could think of designing is that we just have a conversation. And I believe conversations are powerful. But I felt that the other side thing that I had to do was make them right. Make female genital cutters right. She said, Celeste, that's the stupidest idea I've ever heard you have. But in fact, in my studies, I was looking for this. This is several days later. We went to meet with them, and I expected maybe 9 or 10 women max. Do you know how many people came in that small room? 50 women. 50. We were backed all the way up to the wall so that there was no room, even the egress was blocked. And my friend Beth, who has the white hair there, went like this as I started to talk. And I started. You are beautiful, powerful leaders in your community. In fact, you are the highest paid members of women in your community and highly respected here. And we wondered if we could have the honor of talking with you, and that you could maybe share with us. Tell us about before the rite of passage. And all the arms in the room went. And one of them finally raised her hand and explained that they get together, the elder women with the young ones, and they teach them what it's like to be a mother, what it's like to be a woman in their community, and a wife in their community. I did my homework, I knew that. And so I was able to say, I love that you do that. I wish we did that for young women in our communities when they're becoming a woman. That's wonderful. I will tell others. Can you tell me about what happens after the rite of passage? And they said, one of them finally, well, we gather as a community and we bring food together and presents for the girls, and we dance and celebrate that they're a woman now. And I could say sincerely, I love that. Now, please tell me about the cut. All the arms in the room, again, went. The law has not been able to stop you. And the new Constitution will not be able to stop you. This was 2010. And we are not here to stop you. We are here to acknowledge that Kenyan women are beautiful and powerful naturally. And that you, as leaders, we're not here to tell you what to do. But what if you made a new decision? What if you kept all this rich tradition and simply cut out the cut? And so we have these purple ribbons on, and you can see that I'm still wearing mine in this picture. And they represent that we believe Kenyan women are beautiful and powerful naturally, and you could cut out the cut. There was more to the conversation, but for the sake of time, I'll tell you what happened next. It was that kind of silence that stretches on, and you don't know how long it is. And then suddenly, all the women went, and I turned to my friend Beth, and I said, I think that's a yes. This is 2 days later, and we're doing some microlending, and these women came up, and I didn't know who they were. And thankfully, someone took a picture, because this is what happened next. The one leading forward is the head cutter there, was the head cutter there. And she said to the translator who's raised up and had been assigned to us, but explained that she too was cut, and how her grandmother had pressed her into the side of the creek, and with the other women on a mat had taken a sharpened can and cut away her most tender parts. And that if she saw that cutter again today, she would kill her for the prices she had paid. At this moment, she was our translator, and this woman that's the head cutter said, "We have decided to lay down our knives. Our daughters have gone to others who could be real wives for their husbands, and now they have come back and brought aids to them. And so we are laying down our knives." At this moment, Rosemary in the red fell forward, and the head cutter and she held each other and wept. Would that have happened if we didn't bridge? Would that have happened if we came in and said, "You heathens, you must stop this practice immediately"? But we do that sometimes to each other in work and in families, and we don't have to, because the truth is, in this situation, I didn't know their daughters were paying the price, but they did. No one had ever invited them to make a new decision. What if we invited everyone to be part of the important solutions in our world? I think that's why I love engineers and engineering so much, because that's what you do with your solutions. And I call this process bridging and questioneering, because it's a powerful thing. Oh, you gotta see this. What do you see? A bridge or ships? Both? Bet you see both. So we also nurture leadership in this same way, and I'm going to try to quickly tell about this girl, and I'll tell you which one in a minute. We were in a far part of Zimbabwe. We had left in the very, very early morning at 3 a.m. so as to get there in a timely manner, and we were told by our driver that it would be a couple hours, so 3 a.m. would do it. We'd have plenty of time to teach 200 women how to make their own. And I don't know if you know about time and cultures, but a couple hours turned into, we weren't there till the late afternoon. We only had time to teach 75 of the girls, and 200 were there. And many stood at the doorway and said, pick me, heartbreaking. So we promised we would come back as soon as we could, and Days for Girls Zimbabwe's leaders didn't get back for 4 months. But we left fabric to be the token of our promise to return. And when they got back and said, "Where's the fabric?" they said, "It's gone." And they said, "Where did it go?" And they said, "We have made it into Days for Girls kits." One of the girls taught everyone. Are you kidding me? You should see these things. They're a labor of love. There's a lot to it. One time she saw how to do it on a treadle machine and taught everybody, "Who is this amazing genius?" And they pointed to the girl in pink, 12-year-old Gotsu. She had remembered everything she was taught, and she shared it. And do you know what she said when they asked her, "What is this like? How is it working? What did you learn? How did you do this?" She said, "I am no longer an orphan. I am a leader of women." It's important to empower people. It's important to give them the knowledge, because they do amazing things when you let them be part of the bridge. Far better things than we can do alone. And our audacious goal to reach every girl everywhere, period, won't happen because I stood here, won't happen because an amazing number of genius phenomenally dedicated volunteers all over this globe, but because all of us said, this is something that has to change. But we don't count just those of us on this part of the world. I mean, all of us. In Bangladesh, I've seen them learn to be ambassadors of women's health and then turn and teach the people themselves. I've seen girls say there that before now I never wanted to have a girl because I never wanted a girl to be treated the way I've been treated. But now I hope I have one so that I can teach her that she is a gift. All over this world, we have seen women shamed and left behind. What a terrible tragedy for our economy, for our world's genius and knowledge. We don't know which one of us is the next Wangari Maathai who won the Nobel Peace Prize. We don't know which one of us has the next solution that will solve issues of water and power. And I would say that it could be one of you. Thank goodness you stepped over the line that when I was in college said, I got to my first engineering class, and a young man turned around to me and said, "What are you doing in engineering?" Thank goodness you stepped over the line because we need all of us. We cannot have 50% of us left behind. We need all of us to make a better world. Today we teach them to be able to sew, to make their own Days for Girls kits, and have enterprises where they empower engagement to do so. This is Christine. Christine will explain a little about what you should know about her on our website. If you go to their stories, you can, in media and then their stories, you can see her story in full that she wrote. But this girl was 14 years old and could no longer stay in school, so teachers offered her pads in exchange for sex. She became pregnant as a 14-year-old and turned out so that she was now a 14-year-old girl with a baby girl in the streets. Someone took her in and eventually gave her a sewing machine. She became a tailor, and her one goal was to be able to make pads so other girls didn't go through what she did. She found Days for Girls. Heroes that came to her said, "Let me send you to Days for Girls University." Because today there's something else. There are Days for Girls universities, which isn't a real university. It's a place to learn how to make soap, a place for learning how to make these well, a place for learning how to be a leader, a place to learn how to make it a business and learn, then go try, then learn, then go try. And she had said, "I can't do that. I haven't gone to school long enough to know how to go to university." And they assured her that this was a special one. Since then, she went on to come back and has already in 1.5 years reached more than 3,000 women and girls. That's the power of bridging. That's the power of Days. Days she can use for work, for school, for dignity, and with health. Isn't it amazing what a small solution can do? So here's the part where you can help. You can tell people about it. You can be brave and talk to complete strangers about periods. Really, you can. You can follow us on Facebook. You can sponsor a girl like Christine or a girl like Rachel to be part of it. There are so many ways to help, and most of all, wherever you go, know that you have strengths and that you can make a difference, that you hold a key or can turn a key. Thank you for being supporters of Days for Girls just by allowing me to be here and being in this room. It's been an honor to be with you today. Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
How are we on time?
I think we have time for a couple questions.
Okay.
So there's some questions for Celeste. Oh, great.
I was just curious if you guys used like Diva cups or anything like that, or if it was exclusively reusable pads.
No, we do. Good question. We use menstrual cups. Have you seen these? The best are medical grade silicone. They're awesome. They last, you can use them for up to 12 hours. They last 10 years. They're an ideal solution. However, we do have them, we do offer them, but only about 3% of those we serve are open to using them for cultural, physical or religious or even just personal reasons. But here in the U.S., less than 3% use them. So we're trying. For us, every girl everywhere period means she has what she needs that works for her that she can count on, not just our washable kits. Good question.
Sure.
Sorry, I also was curious if you guys do anything within the United States with like homeless shelters and things like that, because I know that they also don't have access to feminine hygiene products.
For the record, I did not pay her to ask these questions. So, yes, we do. That's a little tricky because they're all different circumstances, right? So we usually offer a hybrid. It's usually a pod, which is really the equivalent of a pad, and also it's some disposable items and possibly a cup. It's a combination, and we let the person who's the head of the shelter work with what they need there. We, in fact, have had in the Bronx, girls have been using these and getting them. Days for Girls New York City is actively working with the mayor and the city council to make sure they all have what they need. We had an increase in a school once they had hygiene of all kinds, including pods, of over 8% increase in attendance, which is a big deal here in the U.S., right? In Edmonds, Washington, so this is an area that's an area right outside of Seattle, and you would never expect the need was there. There were 280 girls who were sofa surfing because family issues were happening or having other issues, so they didn't have pads. And there, they needed solutions. So anywhere that a family has to choose between, or girl or woman, food and pads, pads don't win, and that's why we do serve them. Isn't that exciting?
Okay. Great.
Have you thought about marketing this to people who can afford pads as more of a green solution?
You guys are so good. Okay, yes, we have. In fact, we're working on, next month we meet with marketing specialists. We're launching a new company called Zuberi. Zuberi is a Swahili word that means strong. #strong girls. And you will be able to buy a pod that's beautiful and trendy fabrics and keep it in your purse or your glove compartment or try washable or get a whole kit. And the proceeds go completely to people like Christine to reach more. So isn't that going to be exciting? Good question. Thank you.
I think we have time for one more question. Oh, okay.
Did you ever find out why they did the cutting?
Yes, good question. She's asking why they do cutting. So it's cultural, really long-held cultural practice. It's believed that because there's no feeling or sensation, that the child of the marriage and children of the marriage will definitely be the offspring of the husband. And so that makes her a more valuable commodity as a wife. It also is believed that she will be part of the tribe and be part of the community. This marks her as having passed that rite of passage. And also it's believed that they'll be less likely to lose a child in either childbirth or later in early childhood, although it's rather the opposite. So these are the reasons. It's a long-held tradition. Good question.
All right. Well, thank you, Celeste. How about a big hand for Celeste? Thank you.
Thank you.